So, Mr. Kingsley, what the people had proposed was that if you pled guilty to count 1 of the indictment, then charges you with a felony offense of murder in the 2nd degree. They are then recommending a sentence of no more than 18 years to life in state prison. If you're convicted after trial of this matter, you could face as much as 25 years to life in state prison. Understanding your exposure, and that you may not see an offer this favorable again as we go forward, do you wish to reject that offer today?
I do, sir.
The offer will then be marked as rejected.
In May of this year, David Kingsley rejected a plea deal, choosing instead to take his chances at trial. In October, a jury convicted him of murder, and today he learned the consequence of that decision: a sentence of 25 years to life in prison.
Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. If you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and my partner, Ed Wallace, when we go live or upload another video. We are going to talk about Robert Brooks.
It's the first case in my memory where a New York State corrections officer has been convicted and sentenced for murdering an inmate. It gives you an idea of how difficult that is.
David Kingsley learned his punishment in court today. The ex-corrections officer will now spend 25 years to life in prison.
What these monster beat-up squad, they weren't prison guards, they weren't correction officers, they were criminals, they were murderers that night, and I'm sure that they were for many, many years prior to that. Let's take a listen to the sentencing.
October 20th, the defendant was convicted after jury trial of both counts 1 and 2 submitted to the jury. That is murder 2nd degree as well as manslaughter 1st degree. We were adjourned to today's date for sentencing. The people move sentence.
We so move, Your Honor.
Would you like to be heard?
Briefly, Your Honor, before I speak, there are 2 members of Mr. Brooks' family who have been given leave to make a victim impact statement. At this time, I would first welcome Robert Brooks, Jr. to the podium to make his statement.
Thank you. Last December, I watched you beat my father to death on camera. You showed my dad no mercy at all. You treated my dad like he was an object and not a human. Watching your actions on camera felt like I was stuck in a horror movie and you guys were the monsters. I felt broken and there was nothing I could do. I will never get my dad back, but I do pray that your loved ones never have to endure the kind of pain I experienced. All of this could have been avoided if you and your fellow officers just did your job. My dad will still be alive. One thing I learned over the past year in this case, it matters to a lot of people, not just my family, but incarcerated people and their families all across the state. So many people are living with pain and fear about what this case has exposed. What happened in this courtroom matters. So I pray that the courtroom imposes a sentence severe enough to tell correctional officers that they cannot treat incarcerated people like animals. And I pray that this court imposes a sentence severe enough to tell incarcerated people that their lives matter. Thank you.
At this time, Your Honor, the people would ask Jared Ricks, the brother of Robert Brooks, to make his statement.
Good morning, Judge Bauer. As I've sat in this courtroom over the last year and listened to the evidence Mr. Fitzpatrick and his team have presented, I appreciate the care and attention you've given to the facts and the law in this case. As you previously stated, the number of lives that have been directly affected by my brother's murder is unthinkable, and I couldn't agree more. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are the inherent rights declared by our founding fathers and to be protected by governing bodies. As you know, life comes first in that statement. It's my understanding that once you are deemed an incarcerated individual, you must forfeit certain civil rights, but life is not one of those. Unfortunately, my brother was taken before he finished serving his debt to society, and his right to liberty and the pursuit of happiness can never be restored. Imagine how vigorously a man would pursue happiness upon a joyful, long-awaited homecoming from prison. My brother will never be able to experience that. I've been searching for happiness since I got the news, and I think I'll be searching for it for quite some time. I wouldn't wish this trifecta on Mr. Kingsley or his co-defendants or anyone. I ask that Mr. Kingsley receive a sentence that fits his key role in my brother's brutal killing. and also his inability to take responsibility for his actions. I can't say I respect the men that stood behind that podium last month and accepted their 22 years, but I will say taking responsibility is a step in the right direction. My brother used to say to err is human, to forgive is divine. For us, forgiveness will take a long road. Just like the path through grief and the trudge towards justice, today I hope justice is served.
Mr. Hudson, anything further from the people?
Yes, Your Honor. As always, there really isn't much more that we can add when it comes to the loss that the Brooks family suffered. That's their province. That's what they understand. What we are here to talk about, what I'm here to talk about now, is the taking. The way in which they suffered that loss. Now, the facts in this case are clear, and they always have been. From the very beginning, this case has always been about the video. It's been about what that video showed. And it showed Mr. Kingsley from the very beginning, one of the first images we all saw when the media released those videos of Mr. Kingsley carrying Mr. Brooks's feet as he was face down, arms up behind him, blood already on his face as he got dragged into that infirmary and as he got thrown on that gurney where he would spend most of the last conscious moments of his life. But that was not Mr. Kingsley's only involvement. We've been adamant from the beginning of this case. This is not a one-injury homicide. This is not one thing that killed Robert Brooks. It's a constellation. But among that constellation, what happened to Mr. Brooks's neck burns brightest. And we heard at that trial extensively from Dr. Merkelova damage to the cartilage of Mr. Brooks's thyroid area, a broken hyoid bone, hemorrhaging all through his neck from even pressure. From even pressure that we watched Mr. Kingsley put on Mr. Brooks' neck. As in his entire 300-pound frame, he lifted a 140-pound restrained man off a table by his throat. For no reason. None. That's where that damage came from. But even then, when Mr. Brooks hit the table again, after Mr. Kingsley lifted him up, after he wrenched him by his neck, Mr. Brooks was still alive. He was still somewhat with it. Until Mr. Kingsley and Mr. Anzalone held Mr. Brooks against the wall for 4 minutes, while he went limp, while he was doing nothing, while clearly the life was leaving him. And still Mr. Kingsley held him. Now, Your Honor, we don't always ask for the maximum as a matter of course in trial cases. We don't. It's not our office's policy. It's not Mr. Fitzpatrick's, Mr. Woodfork's. It's not mine. We ask for the appropriate, just sentence. And in this case, there were already other major players here who have been promised 22 years in prison. The major difference between Mr. Kingsley and them is not that Mr. Kingsley took his chances on trial. That was his right. The difference is that Mr. Kingsley made Mr. Brooks's family sit in a courtroom surrounded by people they didn't know and watch somebody they love die. And watched his face as blood was pouring down it, as the air was failing to reach his brain. And they were left dealing with that because of him. Because he alone, of every major player who inflicted horrible injuries on Mr. Brooks as he was helpless and he was in their care, he alone insisted on not taking responsibility for what he did. And it's for that, Your Honor, for that horror that was inflicted on Mr. Brooks's family over and above Mr. Brooks's death, that we are asking this court to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law of 25 years to life on murder in the second degree and 25 years in manslaughter in the first degree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Mr. Niebusch, would you like to be heard?
I've been unable for the past year to send my personal condolences to the Brooks family. And I do send my regards and sympathies to them. I think during this trial and my representation of Mr. Kingsley for the past year, I've gotten to know him and his family on a personal level. I don't need to go through the personal characteristics now, as Your Honor has read through the approximately 30 character letters that I provided to the court. They show a man of compassion, of caring, a correctional officer that spent years behind the bars of the correctional facility, protecting and saving lives and lives of the incarcerated individuals there. The incident that took place that day, and throughout, well, before this trial started and during the trial and after, I constantly heard that this was some sort of welcoming committee. That many of the correctional officers there were waiting in anticipation for Mr. Brooks to arrive and cause injury and pain to correct maybe his behavior. When this incident occurred, Mr. Kingsley was in a completely different building. He didn't know Mr. Brooks was coming in. He didn't know Mr. Brooks. He didn't know of any possible behavior issues of Mr. Brooks. This incident was ignited and sparked by a few correctional officers upon Mr. Brooks' arrival. Mr. Kingsley responded. And I think that's important because Mr. Kingsley was not indifferent to Mr. Brooks' life. And if he were part of that welcoming committee or the people that ignited this, then that may show that depraved or indifference to Mr. Brooks' life. And I think what shows that the most is after this incident, and the video wasn't shown during the trial, but when Mr. Kingsley learned that Mr. Brooks was not responsive because of medical reasons, he was the first to perform CPR. And the CPR that was performed was an effort to save his life, not take it, not to inflict injury. And that is the person that I got to know this past year. The person that cares and the person that tries to help and the person that tries to save lives. Unfortunately, this incident was sparked and ignited by a few other officers and responding officers that knew nothing of Mr. Brooks were caught up in that. And I think that should be taken into consideration in sentencing Mr. Kingsley. And I hope Your Honor has taken into consideration all the character letters that I provided and those two specific facts that were drawn out during trial. And we ask that you sentence Mr. Kingsley to 15 years before.
Thank you, Mr. Niebusch. Mr. Kingsley, is there anything that you would like to say prior to being sentenced?
Yes, sir. Much like Mr. Niebusch here, I'd like to express my sincerest condolences to the Brooks family for the tragic loss they've suffered. I know nothing I say or do can ever change that outcome. I understand that. All of the events that happened over the last 3 days of Mr. Brooks' life should never have happened. Every single incident was senseless. Nonetheless, I would like to offer my heartfelt apology to the Brooks family. I am so sad to think that any action of mine that is untimely death, words cannot express how truly saddened and heartbroken I am that I was involved in such a tragic event that took someone's loved one from them. I, like many others, including the Brooks family, will have to live with that for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Mr. Kingsley, be advised that you have a right to appeal this judgment of conviction. To do so, you must file a written notice of appeal. The clerk of this court, within 30 days of today's date, you may file this yourself, or you may direct that your attorney do so on your behalf. It is now the sentence and judgment of this court that the defendant is sentenced as follows. As to the conviction for murder in the second degree, the defendant is sentenced to an indeterminate sentence of imprisonment, having as its minimum 25 years in state prison, as its maximum life in state prison. As to the conviction for manslaughter, first degree, the defendant is sentenced to a determinate sentence of 25 years in state prison, along with 5 years of post-release supervision. Those sentences just imposed are ordered to run concurrent with one another. In addition, there is imposed a mandatory state surcharge, crime victim, and DNA fees totaling $375. The defendant is committed for the term of his sentence.
The prosecutor on the case says every former guard that physically beat Brooks has been given a sentence.
7 years, 15 years, 22 years, 22 years, and now life. And I hope this sends a message that reverberates throughout the rest of New York State.
The remaining defendant, Michael Fisher, also appeared in court Friday. He is set to stand trial next month.
It is based on the theory that Mr. Fisher was intimately aware of the fact that Mr. Brooks was being beaten, and he stood there and did absolutely nothing. Judge Bauer has already ruled that the law of the case is that is manslaughter.
In September, prosecutors say David Walters pleaded guilty to manslaughter after admitting to standing by and watching as Brooks was beaten. Earlier this month, Walters was released from prison after posting bond, pending an appeal of his guilty plea. Fitzpatrick says a hearing relating to David Walters' release is scheduled for Monday. Meanwhile, the family of Robert Brooks filed a proposed amendments to its federal civil rights lawsuit that has new allegations.
These were not correction officers on the night of December 9th, 2024. These monsters have been doing this for a long time, and I guarantee you that there's many other victims and many other people who were beaten either to death or beaten into submission, beaten to the point where they're in wheelchairs, beaten to the point where they have lifelong issues at the hands of these monsters. There was over 10 or 12 of them in that room, maybe more, that should have all, and including the 2 nurses that we saw in that Marcy Correctional Infirmary outside of it, laughing and carrying on. Those 2 nurses should have been locked up. And Robert Brooks' life mattered. And I had mentioned to you guys in the beginning in December of 2024, on December 9th, after we started covering this, that we would stay on this. We would stay on this case. And I stayed true to it. We will let you know what the this last piece of shit, what his sentencing is. It's going to be disheartening because it's not going to be a great deal of time. But I do want to thank you guys for being here, and we do appreciate each and every one of you. So on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, have a good weekend and enjoy it. We'll talk to you soon. Peace and love.